afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm excited because this is the first time that I've actually spoken to Jim Shorten, even though that we have chatted back and forth on Facebook. Now, the hard part for me is going to be asking Jim some interesting questions that haven't been asked before. Now, as of course, you've seen Jim on the Team House and with Tilt on SOGcast, and you were on Jocko as well, correct?
Well, it was that was with Tilt
Okay.
Myers. He did
Okay.
it for Jocko.
Well, that's cool. So I'm not going to educate people about everything that you've done in your life because that's a thick book in its own. But we're gonna. So I'll update people here that you served in the Navy. So you left home, and if I'm wrong with this, that you please correct me. Left home, joined the Navy. And that was in the 1964. That was your first trip to Vietnam. When you were there, then you saw some special forces guys, hitchhiking, and you kind of got to talking to them, and then you were intrigued by that. So then later on, after you got out of the Navy, you joined the U.S. Army, and you found yourself back in Vietnam, and this time as special forces. And then now, was this first that you were in an A team? That's correct, right?
Yes, I was on an A502, which is not your typical 12-man A team. It had about 50 some odd guys on it. And
Wow.
they were the security for Nha Trang. So if you were in the Trang, you looked at the hills, you saw all these little tiny outposts out there, and there was one American on each one. I was on the other side of those mountains, way out, and I was the only American there. I had 133 Vietnamese with me, CIDG, Civilian Irregular Defense Group. And the reason they had that was to talk to the aircraft. If they got in trouble, they had American pilots flying overhead, so they wanted somebody on the ground to be able to talk to the pilots.
Now, also speaking about language, you during your time there had learned some basic, Vietnamese language through a girlfriend. But
Right.
right, so even though that they now the Vietnamese who were helping you, were they indigenous or were they Vietnamese?
The ones that are helping me, what do you mean? The ones that are CIDG?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, those are all Vietnamese.
Oh, okay,
I did
okay.
have one guy that was Korean, but he was living in Vietnam and he was raised as a Vietnamese.
Okay, so you could speak to them because I know that the indigenous people, they have quite a few different dialects, right?
They used a lot of French in their terminology. Like beaucoup is French,
Yeah.
Kiki. Um, but when I was over there in the Navy, I had a girlfriend, and she didn't really speak very good English, so we just started teaching each other. So I ended up with a good working knowledge of the Vietnamese language. I could sit at a restaurant and people would be talking about me, other Vietnamese, and I knew what they were saying, so I'd turn around and answer them in Vietnamese.
Wow. Now, I guess the one question I'd like to ask you right now is that you have a very interesting drive in you, meaning that anybody who's ever seen you interviewed, you've done so many different things in your life. From the military to being a doctor after you got out of the military to all sorts of things. So, where does that drive come from? The thirst to want to learn new things and not being scared of change.
Um, to be honest, I really don't know where it comes from. I think it's just the interest of learning as much as I can possibly learn. Um, Life's kind of short and you want to kind of cram it and stuff it in. But I do enjoy just sitting by the stream and trout fishing or fly fishing. I enjoyed sitting on a hill and just watching the sunset, have a glass of wine. I enjoy all that stuff too. I'm not constantly going, 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 going.
So during your various careers, how did you come to the point where, okay, whether it be SOG or in the Navy, how did you come to the point where, okay, were you bored? You had done what you wanted to do?
Yes, if
Okay.
that's what, in fact, when I was in the Army, when I came back to States, I joined the San Jose Police Department, and I was a member. Well, I was in the reserves, 12 Special Forces Reserves, and they sent the whole team down for scuba training. For under combat diver school. So, except it wasn't called that back then. It was just we just wore the bubble back then, the bubble head. But then we all got converted, and they gave us new orders for the combat diver. But we weren't doing anything. If you're a Green Beret, you want to be in a war zone. You want to do something, constantly cross training and cross training and cross training gets old real quick. So what I did is I was training some Air Force pararescue guys on night vision devices, foreign weapons, and that sort of thing. And I was an engineer, demolition guy on the team, but I was teaching them that stuff. And I asked, "Who are you guys?" Because they told me, "Well, we're pararescue PJs," and I'm going, "I've never even heard of it." And they helped us out a lot in SOG, but I've never heard of them. So I went on down. I had a couple of beers with the guys one night, and when I went on down, I talked to this guy named Al Richmond, who was in charge of the pararescue section with the 129th Aerospace Rescue Recovery Service, ARRS. And it was in the Bay Area. Actually, they were at Hayward at that time. Now they're at Moffett, which is an old Naval Air Station now. But I saw what they were doing, so I went back to my old A team, and which was a 314 underwater operations team there at the 12th Troop. And I talked to Jimmy Gaston, who was my team sergeant. I go, "Jimmy, I'm going to leave." He goes, "What do you mean you're going to leave?" I says, "I'm going to go be a PJ." He goes, "You can't leave." I go, "What do you mean I can't leave? I'm not obligated." He goes, "Look," he says, "you're family." And I go, "Yeah, I know I'm family. We can still be family. We can still hang out and stuff, but I'm bored to death." So he showed me my orders for E8. I had my orders. I already made E8 and everything. And he goes, "Well, all I can do is," he tore up the orders. And so I went ahead and went down to the 129th, and they put me through some training to make sure I was capable of being a PJ, because it's one of the hardest training. It is the hardest school in the military, outside of
Really?
like yeah, unless you're trying for Delta Force or CAG or something like that. But it's really hard. So they put me through it, and then they sent me to school, and school was a piece of cake for me. Actually, well, it wasn't a piece of cake, I won't say that, but I made it through, and then went back to the 129th and started doing missions with them.
So for and this is going to be might sound a weird question to ask, combat vet, but out of everything that you've ever done in your life, what was the most dangerous thing that you thought, "Oh my God, like I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this alive"? I mean, because I know that even like diving, you can have some very dangerous accidents, with the bends and that kind of stuff, or it could be jumping out of an airplane in a non combat role. So is there something that springs to mind that you think about, like, wow, that was very close?
I think the most dangerous thing that I've ever done is in SOG, going in on a bright light mission when you're flying in and when you're coming back out again is the most dangerous time. I mean, you're sitting in that helicopter or hanging on the end of a rope or sitting on a ladder, and you're just waiting for something to happen until you get far enough away. That's probably the most dangerous. Um, Pararescue is dangerous. Jumping with full scuba gear and
Yeah.
everything out in the middle of the ocean is pretty dangerous. I
Yeah.
had a buddy that was killed in the North Sea with it. He
Wow.
snapped his neck on the risers and all that equipment. Um, but a lot of people ask me, what's my favorite branch of the service and all that sort of thing. And I tell them, I said, the my favorite uniform, believe it or not, is Navy whites. I love the Navy whites. Um, my favorite branch, it would have to be the camaraderie that's in the Army and Special Forces, because I still hang out with all those guys and stuff, and as you know, a SOAR. Um, the branch I loved the most was being a pararescueman, because all you do is save lives. And you put yourself in a lot of danger trying to save lives. Parachuting into the mountains for a plane crash, trying to take care of any survivors. Um, Parachuting out in the middle of the ocean. I've jumped into 32-foot seas trying to
Wow.
save somebody on a ship, and what you do is you got to swim to a dinghy. The dinghy takes you over, and there's a door on the side of the ship. They drop a ladder. You got to wait for the highest wave to grab that ladder and get inside. But those are probably some of the most, those are dangerous. But the one thing I've learned, no matter what you do, is you've got to trust your equipment and trust the men that are around you. And once you've got that down, and then everything else it just goes like clockwork, and you just go ahead and do it. Probably one of the scariest things. Well, I started skydiving when I was in the Navy, but when I was over in Vietnam, I made 3 Halo jumps over there. They were more like skydiving, and before Halo came out. because your equipment was only about yay big, it's like that little pack you put on your back. And then your rifle, if you want to carry it, on your side, you can,
Wow.
put it on your side this way. But over there, I trained, I was there in the same time period as Cliff Newman, Samuel Hernandez, and Melvin Hill were getting ready for the first combat halo jump. And that was a real thing. I mean, they went through some really hardcore training. They trained in Okinawa, came back to Vietnam and trained at B-53. And the guy at B-53's name was Frank Norbury. So we all kind of kept pestering Frank, hey, when are you going to take us up and throw us out? He goes, okay, come over. That's good. And they had us on these little things rolling around the floor and trying to get into position and all
Right.
this stuff, which I already knew because I was skydiving. But he said, okay, let's go. And they just take you right up. And they got this cap 3 thing, this parametric, works on barometric pressure, and it's on your side. They use 2 at night and 1 during the day. So, but you free fall out and jump out at, I think my first jump was 14,000, and you free fall down to like 1,000 feet. And because it's low opening, you jump at 1,000 feet. That way, when your chute's opened up, you're only like maybe 300 to 500 feet off the ground, so you can get down pretty quick. And I had one of those not open up on me. I got ground rush and I reached in and pulled my chute. Um, but those are kind of scary. You think about it, just get up and okay, go. Nobody's, I had a guy named Earl R. Glenn jump with me one time, which was really good. This guy had all the combat jumps you can imagine from World War II and Korea. Obviously there's second other jumps going on at the same time, but he made every one that he could possibly make. Had stars all over his wings. But then I'm losing my thought here. The other guy that jumped me was Billy Waugh. Billy Waugh made a
Oh
jump
yeah.
with me.
Wow.
And but I've got them all in my logbook and stuff, so that's kind of cool. That's one of my favorite mementos. I don't think my children know who they are, but at least if they keep my logbooks and stuff, they'll know.
So this is actually a picture from a photo album that I have, and I guess it's a yard who's jumped out of a helicopter or something, Um, but is that your standard parachute that you'd be wearing? Like,
Yeah,
that's just your day to day parachute, right?
yeah, that's for the halo jumps. Yeah, he's free falling there. So yeah, that's your halo jump type chutes that they were using over there. And you got to hand it to those yards. My gosh, they had no training like being a paratrooper or anything else. They just were a member of a team and they just put them through and kick them out. And it's like,
Wow.
whoa, those guys have got to. We had one yard that was really tiny, and he would jump trying to hook up for regular jumping, jump and trying to hook a static line up. And finally, they'd get close to the door, and one of the guys would hook them up.
Wow. I
But
mean,
they were gutsy people.
yeah, another guy who I know who was at a CCC. He said that the yards that we as living here in North America, we're always throwing things, whether it's baseball, softball, whatever it is. So we have a generic understanding of how to throw something. He said, but for the yards, when he was trying to throw them, teach them how to throw a grenade, they didn't understand. So that was for him, that was kind of an interesting thing. But now, you had told me, because in order to help me with this, that there were some aspects of your time on the A team that you hadn't had the time to talk about in other interviews. Is there a particular event that happened that?
Well, one of the things I did run on the A team is I took prisoners on the A team.
Wow.
Um, how that started is I went to A502, which is like 50 some odd guys on this team for all these outposts. And they sent me down to a place called Suyao with a guy named Bill Hefferman. And Bill later on got a commission and became an officer. And they were looking for somebody else to go down there. Somebody had more experience. So I talked to our captain. We didn't have a captain like most A teams. We had a major. It was Major John McBride. And I told him, I said, I'd like to take Suyao, that outpost. And he goes, well, you haven't been in country very long. And I told him, I says, well, yeah, I've been here over 2 years, So, and I was referring to my Navy time. And plus I had an understanding of the language. So anyway, he let me go on down there, and Bill Heffernan told me he'd be okay because he got along. I got along with everybody. Um, so I did that. But when I was down there, I was getting hit about every day and a half. Even when Bill Heffernan was there, we were getting hit every day and a half. They would shoot into the camp to see if we're awake, to try to see what our reactions would be and that sort of thing. I'd have to go out every week and check my wire, especially wires going out to Claymore mines, because they would, you got a piece of wire. It's like this. You got that two piece. They would cut one side of it so that it looked like if you pulled on the wire, you'd see it was still connected, but it might not have that connection.
Wow.
They would do things like that. So we had to check it. One of the other problems I had is some of the yards would they'd go out there and the closer claymores, they would actually open them up and take the C4 out and then close it up again because they figured nothing's going to happen, right? Or something. I don't know. But they would do that and they would use the C4 for cooking, because it burns pretty hot. Um, but I had those kind of problems with them. And when I was there, what I did is I built up a fortification. The camp before I got there was overrun, and so a lot of people got killed. But there was an artillery unit right there next to us, and they were moving the artillery unit out. And when they got rid of most of the stuff, got out of there, they overran the camp, and they took some guys and tied them to the fence posts and stuff, and they were actually slicing them up with machetes and setting them on fire and doing this kind of stuff to the Americans. So that's when I got there, and then I went ahead and we actually moved the camp to the top of a little hill and set it up there. And I built it. Well, the bunkers were there, but I reinforced all the bunkers. And the other thing I did is I put chain link fence around the bunkers about 6 feet away from them, so that if an RPG hit, it would
Okay.
hit
Yeah.
the wire, go off, and the only thing that hits the bunker is that little motor. So that saved a lot. One of the other things I did is the enemy would set up their rifles where the bunkers were and where the people would be. And so at night, when it's dark, you got those bright lights, they would actually uh, shoot at those areas, like the bunkers and stuff. But I didn't have anybody in the bunkers. What I did is I had the lights in between them, and I had everybody get out by the lights, and they'd get down. We had sandbags built up. I'd had them down there to supporting it in case somebody tried to shoot at somebody inside the bunker. So I did those kind of tactics. I also had food gas out there.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
Food gas, it's a gelled gas, like kind of like a napalm, but it's in a 55-gallon drum. And I put it out there all around my avenues of approach. And there was a time when they told me they were going to overrun the camp. They got intel saying they're going to overrun my camp. And a soldier by the name of Tom Kemmer. Tom Kemmer was the enlisted man in charge of the Sante raid.
Oh
And
wow.
Tom liked me. He liked me because he knew I always, if I went back to the main camp and like on Mondays, they say, "Hey, I need somebody to go run a mission." I always volunteered for the mission. I've actually been on missions, like 3 missions, like a 1 week mission, a 2 week mission, a one week mission, right back to back, no
Wow.
breaks. And so he liked me for that reason. I was there to do something. And he got the intel. So he came down and we're sitting outside back to back. And he goes, "You tell your people to make sure they wear a hat. If they're not wearing a hat, we're going to shoot them." So made sure all my guys were wearing hats, and I didn't let anybody leave the camp either after that hour because somebody might sneak out and tell the bad guys. So anyway, so nothing happened that night, nothing at all. So Tom went back, and it was about a week and a half later. All of a sudden, I'm in my little bunker underneath the ground there, underneath the 50 caliber tower, and I'm hearing this boom, 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 and it was mortar rounds. So I told my interpreter, I says, "Get on the radio and tell the main camp we're getting hit. We're probably going to get overrun because they'll hit you with a mortar before they try to overrun you." So I went outside with an H1 radio, which is a direct line. You have to be out, and the camp's like 5 miles away, but it would work in a straight line.
Wow.
So, but I went out there and mortars are going off all over the place. We got hit with over 60 mortars. I found 60 or 61 shipping plugs for the mortars the next day. So some of them don't have shipping plugs. They lose them along the way. But I found 3 locations where they're firing mortars at us. And so when I was out there, I had my guys firing, I think it's a 57 recoilless rifle. It's been so many years. but they're firing into the bushes and all that kind of stuff, and the machine gun's going crazy, and my 50 caliber guy's going crazy, and so I went ahead and I saw the enemy starting to come through because I had flares up and everything from the 4.2 mortar. So I went ahead and I blew the flue gas, and the flue gas evaporated.
Oh,
Yeah, because I didn't know you're supposed to change it like every 3 to 6 months. I didn't know. So I had it all out there and everything, and I blew it, but it blew a big giant white cloud, and that whole cloud just lit up like a flame, and it just scared the dog poo out of them. They turned around and they left. So
wow.
that was kind of cool. But I've set up ambushes and stuff like that off out in the area. The guys would go out, they'd set up ambushes. And I remember one time we picked up a guy. We went out after the ambush was over the next day, and we did a stroll through the area. We found one guy, and he was there. He's a 14-year-old kid. He got shot in the leg, and the enemy left him there. They took some leaves and put it on his wound, and put some mud on it, and they put an old parachute flare as a bandage and wrapped it up tight and left him there. So I went ahead and had my guys take him, and we found a couple of bodies and stuff. But we went ahead and took the kid back to my camp, and I've actually got movies of him, but I'm taking care of him and stuff and treating him. And he actually thought that when I was going to give him some morphine, which you got to be careful giving Asians morphine, I gave him a little bit of morphine to try and help him out with the pain. And he actually thought I was going to kill him. And, I was going to kill him with that stuff, and we were going to cook him and eat him. He actually thought that because that's what the enemy would tell a lot of those young guys. Don't get caught by the Americans. They'll cook you and eat you. You know, they'd
So
actually put that kind of stuff out there. It's crazy.
wow. So just to interject, so when you said that you have to be careful with the morphine with the Asians, is that because they're smaller stature
Right.
and that the measurement in the ampule was meant for your average American 175 pound or whatever it could be? Is that what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Plus Americans have been getting inoculations, probably throughout their life, and a lot of the Asian people don't. Their body that could put a shock on them, especially if you give them too much of it, because their body's not in and not used to getting anything like that. So I just give them a half an ampule. Just put it on like on their other leg or someplace else where it would take time to get through the system. Put it in the muscle. Um, that kind of stuff. That's all you just got to be careful how you work with them.
It's amazing that what the fear of some words can do. I mean, for that poor kid, I mean, he's a 14-year-old kid. He's been brainwashed, and now he thinks that the white guy here with the red hair is going to bring out the salt and pepper and enjoy some Asian cuisine, right? I mean,
Right.
that's brutal.
It
But
is. It's crazy.
and so I know that with the yards that they didn't like the North Vietnamese or the South Vietnamese because of racial issues throughout many years. So with the guys that you had, if they caught a wounded NVA or whatever, would they be dealt with like I mean, were there? I guess what I'm saying, if you caught prisoner, would they always arrive back alive? Because I've heard so many stories where the U.S. guys saw a guy says, "Don't kill him. We want to interrogate him." So did that ever happen? Or
Well, I've heard stories where, you always hear these stories where they try to get somebody talking in the helicopter, and then they throw one guy out and try to get the other guy to talk. And then they realize that they threw the officer out and kept the private. You hear those kind of stories. I don't know how true they are. I really don't. I never had a problem with it. Most of my team, I had some Montagnards on there, but most of them were all Vietnamese, and everybody got along. And the Montagnards, they spoke Vietnamese as well. On the CIDG, they all spoke Vietnamese because they lived in those neighborhoods, but they also spoke their own language as well. I had some Montagnards there, and a lot of some of the Vietnamese too. They wanted to have their families by the camp. So I had an area that was pretty much secure, and I told him, I said, I want you to dig the holes deep, like no less than 4 feet deep, and put the poles in there and put a cover over the top, and they can stay there because once in a while they would stay there with their husband, then they go back to their hamlet or whatever. And then what they did is like a dummy, I didn't check those holes like I should have. They only dug them about 2 feet deep, and they had all these poles on there, and they had this roof up there, and they had some sandbags on the roof. Well, it rained, and when it rained, the ground got soft, the sandbags got pretty heavy up on top, and the logs fell over on themselves, kind of like this. And they were hunting hammocks in between them. And I remember there was a woman there. She was a Montagnard woman. She was pregnant and she had her daughter, and they were all sleeping in one hammock. And when it came down, it landed on the mother's pelvis. It broke her pelvis. It killed the baby that was inside, and it crushed the little girl's skull. And so I had him take all that out of there. But I had a few instances like things like that would happen every once in a while. Um, the By the way, that one soldier, the one 14-year-old kid, I took him down to Cameron Bay, to the hospital there. He ended up dying. They took his leg off, and then I went down a couple weeks later to talk to him, and his leg was gone. I went down a couple weeks later, and he was dead. And I got in a fight with the doc. We were going to get in a real fist fight. And he goes, see how many Americans I see coming in here dying because of people like him. And I said, he's a 14-year-old kid doing what his government's telling him to do. I said, he doesn't know you, he doesn't know me, he doesn't hate us. He's just doing what he's told to do. I said, but you just killed all our intelligence because he could have told us a whole bunch about where his unit's going and what their plans were. And so he ended up dying. There's been other times when I went out there, and I remember one time there was a hospital up on the hill, and I wanted to find out where that hospital was. So I set up a local ambush, and a bunch of the enemy started coming through. So we fired them all up, and I ended up getting one NVA and two Viet Cong that were working at the hospital. The rest were porters carrying like medicines and stuff like that. But some of them I just kind of let them go, got rid of them because they were local VC. I'm not into killing people. So, but the one of the guys, we found out where the hospital was and everything, and then there was a camp just north of me that I could overrun, and that's when we actually pinpointed the hospital because there was like 36 people killed in that one little. It was a tiny little outpost. 36 people were killed in it. But there was enemy in the wire, but they took a lot of their wounded, and they actually followed them up and found out where their hospital was. And what happened after that, I don't know. One of the things working in Vietnam is when you're working and you take prisoners, you can interrogate them, then you turn them over unless it's another group like White Horse element of the Republic of Korean
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
They were north of us. So if we were in their area, then we would turn them over to them, and who knows what they would do,
Yeah.
But
Brutal.
yeah, they can be. So I knew some Korean Special Forces guys. But we would turn them over to the district chief, and the district chief would say, "Well, we're going to let you go as long as you can tell your commander don't hit our village." And that was one of the things that was going on over there. Because the Vietnamese have been fighting for like 300 years, before the French and everything else. So that was one of the problems we had over there. I was at B-53, the 1-0 school, and I taught POW snatches or prisoner snatches. And we went out one time and we picked up 3 NVA there. And one was an NVA and 2 were Viet Cong again. But they had kids with them, and they were all in ox carts. And it was an Australians' area of operation, but the Australians were on a maneuver running out there on a mission, and the enemy started shooting at them. So they all took off and ran into a field. Well, the field was covered with mines, so they lost like 36 people that were killed or wounded from that. So they asked if we can go in there and take some prisoners. So it was an ideal situation. So I went ahead and I went in with the team. Actually, I was supposed to go home, but I went in with the team. And the next morning, we heard some ox carts coming up, and that's when we got these people. And at first we didn't know who they, we figured they were just farmers. Then we realized that, found out that she was an NVA, playing the mother and the grandfather and a bunch of kids with them and that sort of thing. So it was a pretty good plan, but I let all the little kids go. We destroyed all the stuff they had in the wagon that were making mining implements and stuff. And we let the kids just take the oxen back home. And then we took the prisoners to B-53 and we interrogated them for a spell. And then we turned them over to the Australians. And then the Australians would talk to them and everything. And then the Australians would give them back to the province chief. And the province chiefs would say, I'll let you go if you don't hit our village. One of those deals. But that's pretty much how it worked. It's crazy.
It seems to be that things haven't changed much. I know that in some of the, the wars in the Middle East, in, Afghanistan, where there's so many different warlords that the Americans could pay off like one group and say, look, we'll give you X amount of money. Don't shoot at us. Oh, yeah, okay, that's fine. Like, it's what I've learned from talking to all you guys and reading things that were, secret, is that nothing is what you think it is as far as a civilian reading something, right? I mean, I'm sure you've read many books and documents and you know the truth behind it and you're going, yeah, that's not really what happened, right?
I've read a few books. Frank Miller's book, he had a couple of stories in there that I knew were kind of uh, what's the word, embellished, we'll say. But most of the books I read are right there. Those are all my medical books. It's all medical junk, because I'm a radiologist. So, but I've all my books. So I still keep them. I still study. I still read them, even though I'm retired.
Wow.
I don't read too much war stories and stuff. I really
No,
don't.
no, I'm sure, it's and that's why that with my books, if I ever ask you guys, hey, do you have a story to share? It's always something that's a little bit different, right? And I think the combat vets are always worried. I'm going to ask them about, well, what's the worst thing that you've seen? And I don't want to know that, but I might ask a guy, hey, did you ever see a tiger? Did you ever see, two-step snake, or the scorpions or the leeches? I want to hear those stories, right?
Oh, I can tell you them all.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
When I was going through 1-0 school, I was carrying a Swedish K,
Right.
but got up in the morning, we were walking, and we stopped to take a break, and we heard something walking on the bamboo, the dry bamboo leaves. We heard something walking, and I'm sitting there, and I took my Swedish K because it fires from the open bolt. So I just unloosened it, brought it over. All I had to do was pull the trigger. All of a sudden, the bushes opened up, and a tiger stuck his face in. It was a small tiger, like a young
Wow.
one. He stuck his
Wow.
face in. He just kind of looked at me and looked at everybody else, and he just backed away and walked away.
Wow.
It's really funny. I've had it with monkeys. I'm assuming it was monkeys. One time I was on a mission in Laos and with Joe Bandiver, and we heard this walking coming towards us at night, and we got underneath a fallen tree and bedded down right there, really quiet. And we heard all this noise coming around us, walking around us. And I'm sitting there going, I'm looking at them and they're looking at me and we can't see each other, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden we just laid there and went to sleep. And the next morning we decided we better get up real early, and just sneak out in case they're asleep. Maybe we can get the jump. So we got up real early and we walked away, no incident. And it was maybe an hour and a half later or something like that. All these apes come through. All these apes are coming all over the place. And so the only thing I can assume is they were apes and they probably could see us and then just left because they got better vision than we do at night. Um, Let me see what some of the leeches. Heck, I remember when I was on the A team, I used to go swimming a lot. We had a river by there. So I'd go swimming, and heck, as soon as you come out, you got to check each other off for leeches. Been on missions too, because leeches, they'll be on a little leaf and they'll be going like this, on a leaf. And as soon as they grab your pants, they're on, and then they'll work their way down and get it. So, and I've leaned back against a tree to take a break or something, and all of a sudden you get this wet spot, and it's a leech. What you did, you just popped him. He got big and fat with blood, and you just popped him, and all your blood got cold on your back. I've had that happen. I don't know. I'd say maybe about 3 times. So, but those things do happen because I used to wear my shirt open. I wouldn't know it if one got inside there, because you're paying attention to what's around you, and you don't feel them. Scorpions. I remember one time when I was on the A team, I was down in my underneath the 50 caliber tower, and I'm laying there asleep, and my interpreter goes, "Jim, Jim, Jim." I go, "What, what?" He goes, You got a scorpion on you. And I go, where? "It's on my chest." So I'm looking down. I go, oh yeah, I just laid there. He goes, no, no, you got a scorpion on you. I go, come. His name was Nua. I go, Nua. I said, if he was going to hurt me, you would have taken him off my chest. He took the little stinger off him.
Oh, and now with the scorpions that I know that the smaller ones are more dangerous and have more toxin, right? The big ones they look more intimidating, but they have the bigger claws for defense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how?
The I don't know if they have the little ones over there or not. I know here in Arizona, we've got these little tiny blonde colored ones, and those are the ones that'll nail you. If you get stung with them, you can get really, really sick. I tell you, it's worse than that is those friggin' um, centipedes. We
Oh
get these
yeah.
centipedes that are about that wide, and they're about yay long, and they got these really long legs on the side. And I was working on a Trans Am. I love Trans Ams. I was working on my Trans Am. I was up underneath the dashboard. My leg was outside, and I felt this thing crawling up my leg, and I thought it was a mouse. So I kicked it. Next thing you know, these centipedes have these claws, and they grab you. And when they grab your skin, they have these two drills that go straight into your leg. And I'm going, whoa! As soon as I kicked it and it went out, I flat on the ground. My leg started hurting. So I went in and a house and I pulled up my pant and I looked at my leg and man, I had two holes in there where they put these drills in there. And it felt like my leg was in a vice for like about 2.5, 3 days.
Oh,
That is the most painful thing you ever want to experience. Is that it's much worse than a scorpion bite.
wow.
I've
I
never
know
been
that
bit by a scorpion, so I don't know.
on one of our trips to Maui, we saw one of those Asian scorpions, and it was about this long, and the pinchers were like you said, like the end of your thumb. And I don't like anything that when you turn the light on or they're slithering or any of that. I don't. A tiger, yeah, that would be scary, but you can see it or you can hear it. I don't want to like leeches. I would just be freaking out, like just bugs and stuff.
Yeah. Cockroaches and scorpions, I hate them.
Oh.
Don't have any cockroaches in the house. I get beetles in here though. They come around. I get the guy comes around and sprays every once in a while, but you got that time of the year when they're plentiful.
And how about snakes when you were in the jungle? Did you see any of those two-step snakes or
I
pythons?
don't know. I don't know. I've come across mambas. The black mamba. No, I
Yeah.
didn't either. What's that one that's called? Maybe it's an underwater snake. The brown snake, I think it is.
Okay.
I've come across those diving over by Okinawa. Um, if you're wearing they're one of those snakes that's really they don't have fangs, but they can bite you. It's
Okay.
like the Arizona coral snake. It has to grab you in here in the web of
Oh,
your hand because it can't really bite you because the mouth's so tiny. Um, but I remember one time in Vietnam, I sat down by a tree, and I used to sit by a tree. I had a 5-quart bladder, and I had a hose over my shoulder, and I drank my water by pushing on the tree. So I would sit down by the tree, and I remember one time I had a pit viper come out from under my legs, and he just took off, kept going. Um, I don't know if he was poisonous or not. Don't even know it was a pit viper. He was just a snake to me. So I forgot more than I knew about him. But other than that, I hunt for meteorites. So when I was out in the woods hunting for meteorite stuff, I've come across a lot of rattlesnakes, sidewinders. At the Usually when you're at night and you've got a pit fire going, the snakes will come over because they can feel the heat. And I've picked up sidewinders, and I just take them about 100, couple of 100 feet away, and just let them go. Um, they're small; they don't get real big. But I've come across some really huge snakes. I don't know. But where I lived before, I used to live on an airstrip before I moved to Bisbee. I've been working on my house now for 4 years. But when I lived there, I had a crack on the bottom of my door and I never really cared and fixed it. The house was a dump. It was horrible. I bought the place to put my airplane. It had a hangar and everything. So when I left Tucson, I went and stayed at the house there. And I remember a couple of times I'd get up at night and I'd find snakes on the floor. It'd be like a linoleum floor in the kitchen area, and I'd see this thing on the floor, and I go, "That's a snake," And I one time I turned my light on, and it was a rattlesnake. I just happened to have a hammer sitting there, and I just dropped on its head. I took him outside, out in the airstrip, and let him go, and the pigs eat, the heavily eat him. Um, One time I had a red racer in my house. I grabbed him by the tail and I was trying to get him to cut loose so I can get him out of the house. He wouldn't let loose, so I just let him go. I let him figure his own way out of the house. But one time I walked in my house and I had a rattlesnake in the middle of my kitchen floor.
No,
I flew in. It was before I lived there. I flew in and landed, and when I went into the house, I saw him laying there, and I just grabbed a shovel and shoveled him up, took him outside, and let him go. He couldn't move. He was cold. They don't move very much when they're cold. So those kind of things. But I'm not afraid of snakes. Yeah, I just don't want them in my house.
I'm
But
sure. I'm sure.
I remember one time I went to the bathroom and this was when I was on the A team and we were turning over the camp to the regional popular forces. So a bunch of us got down to this place called Bintan or whatever it was. It was over by Nha Trang, but it was on the south side of Nha Trang. There was a communication base there and a Navy base was close by. And I remember going to the bathroom there and there was a snake in there. We think the Vietnamese put it in there.
Oh,
They put it in there to bite us or something.
that's not cool.
No, it's not. They I met a lot of Vietnamese that are really good guys, and I met some that were really bad. I mean, they're really bad. When I had my outpost, those guys were all good. I did have a guy that was an NVA a sympathizer,
Wow.
because we had those problems with guys in our camp. Um, I've got a picture with him too. He's laying across my lap, and the other guys are behind me, and like a little team picture. And I took it down to the little combo center, and he worked in my combo center, and he was a Viet Cong. And
Wow.
yeah, after the team left and stuff, after I got hit that time, I never saw him again. Then one time I was driving my truck down this road, and I saw him on a bicycle. And when I saw him on the bicycle, I could see through his shirt, and he had this bandolier of ammo on him for like a 60 caliber. I told Tom Kemmer, he goes, well, why didn't you run him over? I figured, nah, just let it go. I don't want to just run people over. It makes life worse. But Tom Kemmer was kind of like that. Tom Kemmer, he never admitted he liked me, but he did. I had a little 32 pistol, a little cat pistol. It was a Colt 32 and cat house pistol. And I went in there one time and I asked him, I says, hey, Top, can you get me some ammo for this gun? He goes, where am I supposed to get ammo for that? He goes, well, you're hanging out with the CIA guys. He goes, I can't get out of here. I can't get that. So I go back a week later and he goes, hey, asshole, here. He threw me a couple of boxes of ammo.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, he was really a cool guy. I like Tom Kemmer.
So, I mean, you've done so many interesting things in your life. But one thing that is kind of a segue between your military life and your private life was a bright light that you went on, and I know that that's still. I don't want to say haunts you to this day, but it's something that's still in your mind about what happened to those two, pilots. So, um, can we talk about that for a
Sure.
little bit?
Yeah, and I think it was May. I think it was May 14th, I think is when it actually happened. And May 15th, I think we went in. It was the next day because the Air Force was going to go in there. And they couldn't get on the ground. There was too many enemy. So they asked us to go in the next day. But this happened in Cambodia, in the Ratakin province, just south of the tri border between Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Um, so I went ahead and got my team together. We went up to Dak To, and they had a stand down waiting for the Air Force to finish the thing. And then they decided to send us in. So it was getting close to last light. So we go ahead and went down. I had Homer Hungerford. He was my 1-1. So I went in first, and I waited for his chopper to come in and bring him in. And then we waited, because you want to wait, because when you're coming down from altitude, your ears are all clogged, and you're waiting for all the branches to stop falling and noise stop, from that prop wash or the rotor wash. And so then we decided to move out. So we moved on down, and I found three enemy to my right. What happened is the jet hit the first hill, like that, hit the first hill. The engines left the fuselage and landed over on this other hill, but it hit the second hill and landed on the third hill. The jet did. Um, so we went on the first hill, went down. I saw three enemy. I I got one guy had a weapon on me, but I told my guys, come, some, don't shoot. And so told them to go. So they left. And then I went a little bit further. I started finding bunkers. And in the bunkers, I found some CBU. Now, if it was a CBU from the aircraft or from when, I don't know. I can't imagine it'd be there from any other incident because nobody knew that this place was here. All they knew is there was a bridge on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and the jet came down to drop a bomb on the bridge. And when he came up, he got hit with a 51 caliber. They lost their hydraulics and they hit the hill and splattered over the next three hills. So I go a little bit further, and I see this graveyard with a communist star. I looked at the graves. I counted 6 or 7 graves, but DPA went in there and they found 13 remains in there, and they were all indigenous to the area. So then we went up the hill. I found a boot with a foot in it, put that in a rucksack, went up a little bit further, and all of a sudden these miniguns were going off like crazy over my head. And I could hear trucks coming up the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Um, but anyway, they're firing like crazy. So I get up in there and I'm asking, what's going on? He goes, you've got 6 truckloads of enemy, a couple of armored cars, and you've got a bunch of troops running behind them. And my guess is the troops are coming through the jungle on the other side, coming from behind as well. So we got up in the second hill, and I told Homer, I said, you go out this way with a few guys. I'll take some guys. We'll go this other way. We'll look around, see what we can find. And we picked up medicinal bottles, bandages, picked up Vietnamese metal, picked up pith helmets, picked up shirts, patches, stuff like that. Got all this stuff, and we just stuffed it in our rucksack. And I'm getting ready to head out down to the other hill. And they said, he says, we're going to have to get you out of there. And I'm going, I'm not to the other hill yet. He goes, well, if we don't get you out now, we're going to have to leave you there and pick you up tomorrow. Now I go, well, okay, get us out of here. Because of all the enemy and all the ammo they're wasting on these enemy, trying to keep them down from the hill. They're running out of ammo, they're running out of fuel, and running out of daylight. And there was a storm coming in, so there's no way they could refuel and get back again. So I called them and I said, I told him, I said, bring the choppers in. So one chopper came in, got Homer and 2 other guys out of there. And then the next chopper was coming in they were getting close to me. I told them I wanted 2 gunships on both sides, Cobra gunships. I wanted them on both sides of the chopper and shooting into the bushes behind me and in front of us as best you can. By that time, the enemy started coming through the bushes and shooting at us. So we're shooting at them. One of them managed to get an RPG off, and I got hit in the arm up here, and I still got some shrapnel. In fact, it's itchy. I was just scratching it, but I still got some shrapnel in my hand. Um, the but anyway, when they were coming in, when the chopper came down, we ran up to getting on ladders. They just dropped ladders, and we just jumped on ladders and hooked in. Um, I went ahead and started climbing up, and as I was getting on the chopper, I hear this baboom real loud, and what happened is the chopper hit a tree. I thought he got hit with an RPG, and I was waiting for it to fall on top of me. But he got hit with an RPG. He hit a tree with the rotor and knocked a couple of feet off both ends of his rotor. So, but anyway, he managed to get us up out of there, vibrating like crazy and everything. But I told the pilot, I said, look down there. He says, you see the squares on the ground? And he goes, yeah. He says, it's a village. So anyway, we got out of there. I could see the enemy's trucks down there and stuff, and all enemies shooting at us and everything. And I saw the jet that was laying on its side over there, but I couldn't get to it. So that always bothered me. I ran a bunch of missions. I don't know. I'd say probably between 40 and 50 missions somewhere. Um, but anyway, not in SOG though. I ran a lot of missions when I was in the A team and B-53 as well. So I think they told me I have more missions than I think. I think I've got like 7 missions in SOG. 3 of them were bright lights. But I don't think I have any more than that, but I've had a few people tell me, no, you've got more than that. I did strap hang on a couple other teams. So, and I don't even know what the teams were. Illinois was one. I had a bright light with Illinois. They asked me to take that up. But anyway, so that always bothered me. And then one day I was talking with a guy named Harlow Short, who was a medic when I was at A502. And I told him about it, and he lives in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And he just happened to be in Washington at the time. And he came to my house and spent, a few months with me. And I gave him, I said, I told him I wanted to go back there. And he goes, well, let's go back. And so I gave him like $16,000 and said, you go ahead and go ahead, and because I've got to work straighten out things at work, because they had to find somebody to replace me for reading X-rays. So I did that, and about a month later, I took off, went over, and I brought about another like 20,000 with me, and so then we got together at Harlow. I talked to the Joint Recovery Teams, which is now called DPAA. I met them in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and we talked, and they said, well, we really don't have enough information to go in there. And I said, well, okay. They told me to just enjoy the sights and sounds and go home. Yeah, right. But they happen to have a Green Beret on that Joint Recovery Team.
Wow.
And the guy came over to me and he goes, look, he goes, if you want to go up there, just go up there. I go, what do you mean? He just go up the Ben Lung, get a group together, whatever you want to do, and just go. Figure it out. I go, I will. So I flew up the Ben Lung, and Harlow was going to go with me, but he was a little bit out of shape compared to, heck, I was like 60 or something, I think then. I don't know. I was like my late 50s, early 60s.
So
But
what year was this that you?
this was in 2002.
Wow.
I have to figure out the,
Roughly,
the
roughly.
math
Yeah.
for my age. But anyway, so I took off one time and I'm going, whoa, this isn't going to work. I went back to Ban Lung and I started running and exercising and getting myself in shape. And then we tried again. I hired 6 Cambodian rangers, but these were park rangers, not like military rangers. They all carried weapons though. And one of the guys I hired was the son of the province chief, which was just really lucky. So anyway, we got together. I talked to him. I went and got a whole bunch of maps. There's a place in Phnom Penh that has like walls of maps. So I told them what I was looking for, and they got me all these maps. I taped them all together one night and just cut the edges off and just rolled it up. And I showed it to the the guy that was the lead guy of the guys I hired. I don't want to mention names and stuff, but he went ahead and told me, he goes, why are you going up here? And I go, well, I want to take pictures of wildlife and stuff. He just kind of looks at me and I go, well, there's a jet crash up there. He goes, I says, I know that jet crash. I go, really? He goes, I know exactly where it is. And so we took off. It took us 10 days to get there, hiking through the jungles and everything. And we stayed there for 3 days. On the third day, we got held up by bandits. And they let us go because they didn't want to have any kind of a conflict with the province chief's son, because that would have made it really rough on them.
So at this point, I mean, it's been like, 30 or 40 years late, well, 30 years, I guess, later. And what the public probably don't know is that soil in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia has a lot of acid in it. So it breaks down a great deal of things. So when someone's thinking about a body or what could be left, it's not that much, right? I mean, it can only be teeth at times.
Well,
Right?
one of the things, I'll finish this a little bit and I'll touch on that.
Okay.
So when I was there, we went through, we found everything was gone that was there before. There was a 750-pound bomb sitting up on top of that hill, the second hill. It's still there. I didn't find it when I went back that time, but it's still there. So anyway, we came on back again, and in 2017, DPAA asked me if I wanted to go with them, and I said yes, definitely. So I went in, and this time we were flying from Tavang, which is we took trucks all the way up to from Phnom Penh to Ban Lung, and from Ban Lung, how did we get? Well, no, by then they had a road, so we drove from Ban Lung to Tavang, and Tavang the helicopters were there, so we went ahead and loaded up the helicopter. It took, I don't know, probably about 8 or 10 loads of stuff,
Wow.
bringing supplies up there to stay there for 6 weeks, and then finally we all went up there. And when I was there, then one of the guys from Stony Beach is a good friend. He went down and talked to the Vietnamese because the Vietnamese were there looking for their remains. And they were down where the trucks were. They built a little camp right where the trucks came parked back in 1970. And he was down there talking to him. And I told him, I said, give him this map. I drew a map. So I told him to look here. And they went down there and he gave him the map. And the guy goes, where'd you get this map? He goes, well, the guy that you guys were trying to kill back in 1970 is up there looking for the two pilots. And he goes, huh? Like, he goes, well, we've already looked in this area and we're still going on the outskirts of it. He says we found 127 remains, but we're still looking for over 100 in that one spot. That's over 220 odd people killed right there in that battle, which
Wow.
is crazy. You
Yeah.
know, why wouldn't they just back off and let us get the remains and go out of there?
Yeah.
They could always put grenades under the remains or do something that they normally do. But why would you take that risk and kill all those people? But so they found remains. So that says that, it depends. Maybe it's in clumped areas or something where you might find, um, the where the soil mineralization and the acidity in the soil would destroy the bones. But they did find stuff. So yeah, you would find teeth, but you got to be careful. The teeth could be in roots, and then that root is a tree now. So when you're clearing out this area, you got to chop every little piece of thing up, every little piece of tree up, and look to see if there's a tooth or anything in there. So the groups that have been going back, they did find some bones, but both times they found bones, they both times turned out to be animal bones. And the last time they found some, it was animal bones. And they did find a dog tag from Alan Trent. And interesting thing, it was a PJ that found the dog tag. And because these guys volunteer their services to go in there and work with the DPAA, they'll go into their room and say, "Hey, we're looking for somebody who might want to volunteer." And they usually like to try and take medics. They'll take special forces medics or a PJ or somebody like who's also a medic. They'll take them. So when I was back at Fort Bragg talking to Delta and CAG and those guys, and meeting them because they wanted to meet Tilt and I, John Stryker Myers. So we're talking with him, and this one PJ guy comes up to me and he goes, I know that mission. He goes, I'm the one who found the dog tag,
Wow.
which I thought was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
But anyway, we talked and he told me all the stuff that was going on and stuff. So now what they've got is the DPAA isn't going back in anymore. They're not going into that site. What they've done is they've actually hired a civilian companies to go in. And civilian companies are in there doing all the excavating and everything else. And so when I was at this last SOAR Special Operation Reunion, when I was there, I talked to my buddy from Stony Beach. Eric Phillips is his name. And Eric says, I'm going to do what I can to get you back there. And so he gave me some people to call. He talked to them, and they're excited about me going. So I caught them. I'm waiting for their guy in charge to, I think he's probably checking me out or doing something. I don't know. But he'll be getting with me. And it looks like there's, I would say, about a 70% chance I'll be going back in February.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that would be so nice, not just for the families, but for you to have that chapter closed, right? That you, and do you feel that both of those men died there at that crash site?
Well, I'm pretty sure Alan Trent probably died there. I don't know if Eric Hubert did. Because of that letter that they got from one of the Cambodian residents that said something. The one thing I'd like to know, and when I went back there in 2002, is I tried to find people that were older. I met people in their 70s and 80s, and everyone that I talked to, they were either there after the war and moved into the area, or when the war broke out, they left and went someplace else and then came back. So they don't know if there was any POW camps or anything like that. One thing I know is in Adipu, Laos, there's a hospital there because I went in and I helped them with reading their x-rays when I was there, and talked to them. And they were telling me some crazy stories. Like there's a road between the airfield and the hospital. There's a road going through. And at the airfield, CIA was there. And at the hospital, they had a lot of NVA there. because they were treating a lot of them. They didn't. They would doctors treat anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. It's their oath kind of a thing. So, but they didn't know that about each other. So I'm wondering if there was a POW camp close by, and they just didn't know.
And here's a question that I've asked some of you SOG guys. Do you feel in your heart that there were some, POWs that were left?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because their communication system over there isn't the greatest, especially during the war area. And how many lines were damaged and they've never repaired them. When they got all those POWs and brought them back on that Operation Freedom or whatever it was, when they brought all those people back, there's probably people in Laos and Cambodia that they didn't get the word. And so then when the North Vietnamese say, we send everybody back, that's it. They aren't going to lose face and say, oh, we did forget somebody. They're not going to do that. And so I really don't know. But my guess is there's probably a few that were left behind. And then to save face, they probably just killed them and buried them somewhere. So
yeah, that's
they have a different aspect of life than we do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind. I mean, I've known children when I was over there in the Navy. I was there 22 months with the Navy in Da Nang, and I worked with some kids. They're little kids that would come over. I'd help them out. I'd give them money to go buy food and stuff. And I remember a little guy named Ha, and I asked Ha, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Oh, my brother died. That kind of thing. Got sick and died." And they just kind of look at it, and then I remember later on, I asked him, why are you so sad? What's going on? He goes, "Oh, my dad died. He got sick and died." Because they just don't have the treatment over there to take care of him. They do now, but they didn't back then. So they have a different outlook on life. They just get sad, and I guess they figure they went to Voodoo Land or something. I don't know.
I know that during World War II, that if you got caught by the Japanese, that they feel that in their code, their Bushido code, the warrior code, that you were less than a man. You should have died, in battle. But to give up and surrender was not an option for the Japanese warrior mindset. So that's why they treated a lot the POWs so badly. Like, you should have died, but now you're here. It's definitely a different culture that's hard for us. I know I shouldn't branch all of the Asian culture into one lot, but there are very different things, right? That people believe in and stuff.
Well, the Harry Carey thing.
Yeah. I mean, tell you a quick story. And in my family, there was a man, and he was Dutch, and he was in the Dutch Navy, and he was going to Java, which was Indonesia back then. And long story short, the Japanese bombed the ship. He got put into a POW camp, and he was told to go and butcher a cow. And so when he butchered the cow, he kept a cube of meat for himself. And so the Japanese sergeant told the major there, and the major went to kick this family member, and he missed, and he kicked the wall and broke his toenail. And subsequently, the major had this family member's toenails pulled out with a pair of pliers. So, that's, just a very, very different way of thinking about stuff, right?
Well, I think they used to do the stuff like they'd pour hot lead down your throat, and they'd take and put the bamboo shoots up your nails, or have bamboo. Bamboo grows real fast, and they put you on the ground, tie you down, let it grow through you, or putting increased pain. I know you hear all these stories, and how true they are, I don't know, but I know, I'm sure they were pretty brutal, regardless.
Yeah. But I'd like to try and keep these to an hour. And for this last little bit, I'd like you to educate me about your passion and what you collect, and you've been collecting, and it seems like you've gone quite far around to find them. Meteorites. That's what I'm talking about. So in layman's terms, for the last 10 minutes here, could you educate me and maybe the people that are listening? Because yeah, I mean, to have space rocks in your house, that's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, let me see. I might have something sitting here too. I don't know. No, I don't. Um, uh, Meteorites, meteorite is a meteor. When it's coming through the atmosphere, it's called a meteor or a meteoroid or an asteroid. Meteoroids are a little bit smaller than an asteroid. They're usually bigger, but by the time they hit the atmosphere and burn up, they're going to be a meteoroid because they're going to get burned up. And when you see it coming through like that, and you see that big flame, it's burning up, but because it's got so much pressure. It's like forcing a rock through the ocean, or you skip a rock off the water and it bounces. And it's a lot of like an ocean of air. So when it comes through, it starts burning up. And if you see like little pieces coming off of it, then it's breaking up. And when it hits the ground, it becomes a meteorite. So there's three basic different types, actually. You've got what's called the iron meteorite, which is only about 5% that'll come through that are going to be iron with a little nickel in it. And then you've got the stony iron, which could be like a mesosiderite, or it could be it has crystals in it. That'd be like a palisite. It has what's called olivine or peridot crystals in it, and it's iron, but it's got these crystals. And the iron in the palisite and in the actual iron meteorite, they have what's called a Widmanstatin pattern. It's a pattern. It's like crystalline pattern inside the iron, and it takes millions and millions of years to cool off. And when it's out in space like that, it's cooling down from the Big Bang or whatever started everything. And then depending on how it cools down and how long it is, some of them have a strong or what's called a coarse pattern. Some might have a medium pattern. Some might have a fine pattern. And then from the stony iron, you go to the stone. And a majority of the meteorites that come through the atmosphere are stone. And so the stone, they have what's called chondrites, and they're chondrules. If you cut it, it looks like little balls in there, little tiny balls with a matrix in between all these little balls. Like if you take a piece of styrofoam and cut the styrofoam,
Yep.
you see the little balls in there. That's what a chondrite would look like. Now, they do have some that are called achondrites, and the achondrites won't have those little balls in it. It has a different type of a matrix, but they're all stone. You have got some that are called carbonaceous chondrites, and they're going to have the little balls, but they're going to be all black, like carbon. But it's a different kind of carbon than like a piece of charcoal. At least that's what the astrophysicists tell me. I don't think so. I think, they said that the asteroid belt, it was a planet that never formed. I believe it was two planets that collided. And so if you look at the planet, like look at Earth, you have a molten core in the middle. And then as you come out, you got all this where it's going from iron and closer to stone until it gets out on the outside edge, and the crust is all this living material. So if two planets hit each other and exploded in a big ball of fire, that outside mantle is going to be carbon because of all whatever living material was there, if there was. So that's kind of like what I think is how meteorites pretty much. The asteroid belt, I think, was a planet that exploded.
So these samples or these smaller, meteorites, when you take them to a lab or however that you get them analyzed, are there elements in there that are not known to us on Earth?
Yes. If you get a lunar meteorite, which that's what I was looking for, I thought I had one here. I must have taken it downstairs. A lunar from the moon, what happens? The moon doesn't have much gravity on it, and neither does Mars, right? So if an asteroid comes through and strikes the moon, you see all those craters, or strikes Mars, what's going to happen is it's going to make a big splash, because it's probably like Earth, they're coming in about 20,000 miles an hour. So if it hits the moon or one of those, it's going to make a splash. So what happens is that splash goes out and the gravity can't pull it back, so it just keeps traveling out in space. And so over periods of time, that little asteroid or a meteoroid or what you want to call it, as it's floating around space, gets close to Earth, and the Earth's gravity pulls it in. So when it comes in, that's when we get the streaks of meteors coming through. And when it hits the ground, it'll be laying there. And they don't make these big giant craters like people think they do. The one that made Meteor Crater, I mean, that was like probably 420 by 60-foot trailers, you know. I mean, it was huge. And that was like 50,000 years ago when that one came through. But and there's still a lot of rock. It's called Canyon Diablo. And you can still, I've got a few pieces downstairs of it. Um, there, but you can get some. There was one that came in Caracas, and it was a stone meteorite. It went down to Caracas, Peru, and when it hit, it made like a 30-meter crater. But it dissolved because it filled with water. It was soft, mossy ground, you know. And so when it went down, it filled with water, and now it's destroyed. I had some pieces of that one. I've gotten rid of a lot of my meteorites because I don't know. It depends on what happens next Tuesday if I'm going to stay in this country or not. So, so I've been getting rid of a lot of them. I've got about 20 of them for sale right now on eBay. Nobody's doing anything with them. I'm probably just going to donate them, get rid of them, and I'll just keep a few.
And now I did, sorry to interrupt you, but I did hear you on a different interview. And I'm sure people are wondering, like any collectible, are some worth more than others?
Yes. Yes.
So,
the carbonaceous contract that I was telling you about, that's carbon. That one is worth, if it comes through right now and lands on the ground, they have different classifications like a CM2 or what like that. That one could be worth anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a gram when you find it because it's fresh. There's one that's worth a lot more, probably around 1,500 to 2,000 a gram right now, and that's called the C1. There's only been 3 of them that they found. I think there's a Vuna. I can't think of the other ones right off. I don't want to burn my brain out thinking. But those are worth quite a bit. They're very few. That's a carbonaceous. That's the first one in the table. The ones that are pallasites with the crystals in them, those are worth more than just the iron. But there's a lot of people that do collect the iron as well. But to me, Widmanstatten patterns pretty much they all look pretty similar. So I mean, I've got one about yay big downstairs. It's cut in half, and I traded for it, and I'll probably keep that one and just throw it on the mantle. I've got some big pallasites, and I've got some big stone ones with everything in them. So I'll keep a few of them, and who knows? Maybe if I go overseas, or even if Trump wins, I'm probably going to go to Tennessee. I'll go to the universities and ask the geologist instructor there, if they would like me to give a class on them. And so I'll bring some with me to there. Other than that, I donate a lot of meteorites to the Vatican. So I may just let them have the rest of the collection.
okay, so now you've just opened a door for me.
Box of worms. Box of worms.
Vatican. So what? So why them?
Brother Guy Consolmagno is we're more like acquaintances than real close friends. I mean, we know each other if we see each other, but if you were asking my name, you wouldn't remember, or something like that, because he does so many travels all over the place. There's on Mount Graham, there's a telescope, and the telescope belongs to the Vatican.
Wow.
And yeah, so Brother Guy, who is in charge of everything now in the laboratory of meteorites and everything, sometimes he goes up there. He comes from Vatican City. There's another guy here in Tucson, Bob Mackey, who's brother Guy Mackey. So he's kind of like doing the local stuff now. But Brother Guy will come. He'll come over 3 months here, 3 months at the Vatican City, and 3 months here, 3 months back at the Vatican, that kind of thing. Goes back and forth. And we used to get together like every Monday. And we became pretty good friends, and we'd go out and have lunch together. And I remember giving him one of my carbonaceous chondrites called the Murchison. Murchison, you were talking about different elements and stuff, I think has 22 amino acids in it, which is interesting. That one came down in Australia.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's those are some of and he likes to study them. But I enjoy, most of the time we talk about old black and white movies, but but you got that going. And let's see, Brother Bob Mackey's really kind of quiet. I talk to him just about every year. But now they aren't doing, ever since COVID, they haven't been doing what they call the asteroid lunch. And the astrophysicists from the U of A up in Tucson, the University of Arizona, we'd get together and have lunch. And I used to bring samples and we'd talk about it and stuff like that. And but they don't do it anymore ever since they had COVID. And now they just do it online. So it's I don't think it's as much fun online as it is
No,
in person.
No.
So
So I see that we're approaching this time now. Not that I try and keep exactly to it, but I'd love to have you on again, especially if and I'll keep everybody in the loop if you are going to go back to Cambodia. I'm sure that you'll let people know, and I'm sure you'll be taking a camera and that kind of stuff, and
well, the one thing, like when I was back there in 2017 with DPAA, as yeah, I brought a camera and I've got a lot of photos and pictures and stuff, but you got to be very careful where you're taking your pictures because it's kind of a touchy situation with the family.
mm,
You don't have to put the pictures online and they go, oh, that's where my brother died or something, So you got to be careful with how that is and things that you find. And we found the vest, parts of the vest, and stuff like that. All kinds of equipment. I found some bullets from the 38 pistols that the pilots carried. Um, but yeah, it's kind of a touchy situation. Even though I've got a lot of pictures and stuff,
yeah.
uh, I can't put them on there until the case is already closed.
Uh,
So when I went back there in 2002, I did bring parts of the jet back. I brought parts of the jet back, and I've still got one for Alan Trent's family to give them. And I already gave a piece to Eric Hoover's family.
that's nice. Well, I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the people who enjoy watching these that we wish you luck.
Okay.
So I'm going to end it now, but don't go anywhere because just the part of the recorded because I made the mistake of pressing the end button on a guy that I was interviewing, and then it's like, uh-oh. So anyway, thank you again for spending the hour with us, and
Anytime.
I'll let everybody know about your next adventure. So thank you.
Thank you.